Welcome to Season 4 of Shift Out Loud. This podcast is your invitation to play bigger. What does that mean? It means letting go of the self-limiting beliefs that keep you from stepping into your most powerful version of yourself. My favorite conversations are with people who have made that shift and they move about the world differently because of it. Their setbacks served as a catalyst to change their circumstances, make new decisions, and shift their course. And I hope it inspires you to do the same. So listen in, get inspired, and know I'm right here cheering you on. Hey there, I'm Tracy Spears, speaker, author, advocate, and head cheerleader for anyone wanting to play bigger. My guest this week has definitely been on some very big stages. I'm very excited to introduce you to Dr. Deborah Gist. Dr. Gist is an executive leader and lifelong learner who is deeply committed to leading transformational change and developing leaders working to improve our world. She is nationally recognized for her leadership of innovative programs and initiatives designed to serve every learner with a focus on children and communities historically farthest from opportunity. As a public sector systems leader at the local, state, and federal level, Dr. Gist consistently set bold visions and held a high bar for what is possible when passionate and talented professionals come together with communities to build brighter futures for children. Currently, she brings her expertise from more than 35 years as an educator, state education leader, and superintendent to her role as senior advisor to the president at the University of Tulsa, providing focused strategic support for innovative approaches to teaching and learning and developing transformational leaders. She also serves various national organizations as a superintendent in residence, leadership coach, and strategic advisor, applying her expertise to support educational and corporate growth and improvement. Dr. Gist lives in her beloved hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma, with her family, numerous rescue animals, and enjoys spending time planning her next adventures. So, Dr. Gist, welcome. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. We've talked about this for a long time, just that we need to get together and do the podcast. And with the current events, it feels like the exact right time for you and I to finally be getting together. So I'm anxious to learn a little bit more about you. So the name of the program is Shift Out Loud, and it's about those moments that you've shifted in your life. And you have had a lot of those, and some we're going to talk about more recent shifts. But let's just take me back for a little bit. You served as the superintendent at Tulsa Public Schools. By the way, where did you grow up? Do you mind just sharing that before we jump?
In Tulsa. I grew up in Tulsa. Yes, it's my hometown.
Born and raised?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, not born, but raised for sure.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Well, I know that you have an incredible love for our city, and I'm grateful for that. But you've been on the periphery for so long. I've seen you in the news and all the things, and then we finally have gotten to share some time together. And I'm always when I think about some of those times, how passionate you are about education, how passionate you are about kids learning. So that just takes me right to being the superintendent. Tell me a little bit about what made you love that role, being the superintendent. Was that the goal all along, to come back and be Tulsa superintendent of schools?
I mean, no, not really. I mean, I would tell students often that when I was attending Tulsa Public Schools, that I don't think I even really realized that there was someone who did that job. This was before social media and 24-hour news and all of that. So no, not really. I wanted to be a teacher. And I still have on my desk, actually, my project I did called My Career as a Preschool Teacher. I did it when I was a student at Nimitz Junior High School, which is now Eisenhower International School. And so I wanted to do that. And I still consider myself a teacher. I love teaching. I love teachers. I love students and schools. But I love Tulsa too. As you said, I grew up here. I attended Tulsa Public Schools my whole life. And really Tulsa and Tulsa schools and Tulsans made me who I am. So having the chance to come home to be superintendent of the hometown I love was truly the greatest honor of my life. And I'm deeply proud of the work that we did in Tulsa Public Schools. Nice.
So where were you so you shifted back into Tulsa? Give me just a little bit about where did you shift to before?
A number of places. I did this work in 6 different states. So Texas, Florida, Massachusetts, DC, Rhode Island, and then back to Tulsa. The two roles I had right before Tulsa were state chief roles. So I was the chief state school officer in Rhode Island. It's called the Commissioner of Education for the state. And in District of Columbia, it's called the state superintendent. And so I did that work in those places right before I came home to Tulsa to be superintendent.
Those are big jobs you had, sister.
Yeah, big jobs and different kinds of jobs, but with lots and lots and lots of carryover. And, as it turns out, more carryover than I even anticipated, as I learned later.
Interesting. What does that mean?
That was a little vague, wasn't it? Because I've always led with such a deep commitment to change, to transformation. And because of my long career as an educator, I know that our schools in our country are not serving our students as well as they need to be. And so because of that belief, that recognition, I've always led in a way that moves transformational change forward. And that can be difficult. So, in Rhode Island in particular, we were leading some really significant change, which brought about great results and has really put, in so many ways, Rhode Island is on an incredible trajectory, which I don't take credit for. They have amazing leaders. Their state commissioner now is fantastic. But I see the work that we did when I was there as foundational for what they're able to do. But because of that, it can cause, tumult in a community. And then coming home to Tulsa, that was not the case. We were leading change for sure, and we made tremendous progress. We expanded garden access for all students. When I first found out the graduation rate when I was transitioning home to Tulsa, it was 63%, and we got it up to 78% pre-COVID, and then we took a step back, and I think it's about 72 or 73 right now. I don't know the most recent numbers. When we did that, we were also raising the bar for performance. We were expanding advanced placement classes and students taking higher education classes and technical education classes. And so we were growing the number of graduates while we were also growing the expectations and the opportunities for graduates. But anyway, I did not expect the climate politically in Tulsa to change the way it did. I experienced some of that in Rhode Island, interestingly, from the left, because they saw me as someone who was a big education reformer and I was going to do whatever it took, make decisions on behalf of students. And Rhode Island is a strong union state, and so that caused some upset from folks to the left. And then came home, and I've always been real moderate, and Tulsa's moderate. And so we were just moving along, making the change and collaborating with community members and teachers and students and parents to bring these changes about. And then after COVID, then things changed really significantly in terms of there being sort of this political faction, and the climate just changed. So that's what I was alluding to. So some of those skills and things I learned became more applicable.
Oh, listen, I watched that. It was painful as your friend to watch, the war that ensued. You said I could ask you anything, so I definitely want to talk about all those things if you're open to it. But when I think about transformational leadership and leading in a crisis and all that, that seems to be your superpower. That requires a lot of thick skin. So would you say you're somebody that has thick skin, and that, when you're in some of these conversations, I mean, specifically, we'll talk about what's going on right now, but the Ryan Walters piece, we'll just name it what it is. Like, that was, gosh, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, it's really difficult. And I've always rejected the idea of having thick skin, because as a leader, especially a public service leader, a thick skin sort of connotes like a deflection. And I think it's so important to feel and hear and listen and absorb the feedback that you're getting from community, but also the pain or the worry or the anger that can happen. So, if you're at a community meeting and there's something difficult that's going on, it's important to be fully present. And I think to be fully present, you can't put up sort of a shield. But the way that I've always thought about it instead of that is having just a really solid core or a strong backbone. And when you have that, you can stay firmly planted and not get twisted up about what's happening, but at the same time, really be present and listen and learn from those who are sharing their feedback, however they're sharing it. And that for me comes from my core values, which include, for me, that includes my faith. So, my core values are faith, purpose, and compassion. And so my faith grounds me in everything. And I think if you have those core values, then you can weather things. But it's hard. And I'll tell you, it's most difficult for me when people are questioning not just your decisions, or they disagree, or they don't like a policy or whatever, but when people question your integrity, because really, I don't have anything other than that, like that is fundamental to everything. And I've always led with the highest of integrity, and a really high bar for that for myself and for people around me. And so when there are these, unfounded allegations, and it really is questioning, it's like questioning who you are as a human. And that is really, really difficult.
Yeah, can be devastating. And since you opened the door, we'll just jump in earlier than what I wanted to, but I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about how Tulsa Public Schools handled a high profile case of financial misconduct. What do you want people to understand about that?
Well, I mean, I think most Tulsans do understand. There have been
Agreed.
so many allegations for so long, honestly, that it's really hard to know where to begin. And that's part of that's intentional. Is they're just like throwing everything they can, all kinds of allegations. And we've reached a place in our world where it doesn't have to actually have even a nugget of truth. So there's just all these allegations. And so there've been so many of those, it's hard to know where to begin. But there is this recent set of these like grossly irresponsible allegations about when I knew about the employee we had who was a lone actor who defrauded our district and betrayed all of us, every Tulsan, me, our team, our students. And I just think, the facts are super clear. People don't have to take my word for it. The facts are really clear that we had what we thought was a policy violation in the district. And even though it was a policy violation, I immediately took it seriously, did that internal investigation, brought in an investigator who was a former district attorney in another county. So he knew about these kinds of things. He did all these interviews, and we conducted that investigation. And then the moment that we saw something, that it was laid in front of me, that it demonstrated not just a policy violation, but very possibly criminal behavior, I brought it to the authorities within minutes. That person is now in jail. The FBI fully investigated that. All sources indicate it's a lone actor, and the resources, importantly, because of the actions of our team, were restored to the districts. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were restored to the districts. And so it's hard to see the kind of reporting, and I'm a huge supporter of the media. I mean, I truly believe that the free media in our country, the press, is like hugely important. And I've always believed that it's important to, whatever the story, that you're being honest and transparent. And so when this happened back, oh my gosh, I think it's 3 years ago now, I held a media accessibility, and I told Tulsa what was happening, what we knew at that time, which at the time it was a smaller amount because the authorities hadn't investigated, and all I did was investigate up until this point and then report it. So I shared with them what we knew at that time. I let Tulsa know, and I knew it wasn't going to be good because it's not good, but believed that it was important for us to be transparent about that. And so to see the story and the depth of irresponsibility in it, where they take sort of these internal like musings, and then they use words like, it suggests that she may have known, that this person, did these things like months before she reported it. It's baseless. And it's really hard because people are not very discerning with what they see and they hear, and I don't blame them. I get that, but they ran it anyway, and it's difficult. And I think it's harder because it's my hometown and because I love Tulsa so much and have so many people here who's, all of Tulsa matters to me. And so, people I love and know, and having them listen to that is difficult.
Well, you're handling it with a lot of grace. It would be hard for me to be in that situation and not want to like just go on and blast everybody. So like, what is the responsibility for you? Like, because I mean, what you defend, you make real. Like we all have heard that before. So what's your strategy now? Like,
Yeah.
gosh,
Um,
it's hard, isn't it?
it is really hard. And I've always thought, well, I'm not in the seat anymore. And so, when I was referencing my core values, I mean, one of them is purpose. And so what that means to me is that the way in which I'm serving it's not about me. And so in this instance, when I think about the response, it can't be about me. It has to be about the district and the work. And so I've chosen to stay silent, that I haven't. This is the first conversation I've had that, could be considered public about it since I left, because it's not about me and because I'm not in that seat anymore. And I shouldn't be going around, putting myself on television and so on and so forth. It's distracting. And we have far too many things that we need to be focused on. But at the same time, because you and I had scheduled this before all of this kind of recent stuff, and I think it feels weird to just pretend like it's not going on when it is. And I do think it's relevant to our conversation about leadership too. So one of the reasons why I think it's so important for people to hear from me in this conversation, and I won't be talking about it outside of this, this is kind of it. I think it's so important for Tulsans to know how well Tulsa Public Schools is managed. And the people who are attacking the district, which included me and still includes me, they're doing it intentionally because they're trying to dismantle public schools and Tulsa Public Schools specifically. And that's a whole different podcast. I don't want Tulsans to not have confidence in their district. It is very well managed. We found that criminal act and reported it. And that is exactly what an accountable organization does. And, there are all kinds of organizations in our city, churches, large businesses that have had someone do something like that. And it happens, and you address it, you report it, you handle it, and then you make sure that whatever kind of ways that it was able to happen, that you tighten up your procedures even more. But our procedures are strong. We brought in a fraud expert after it happened to go through our procedures and policies and practices to give us all the recommendations they could give us. And that happened within a couple of weeks. I mean, I think that was the time frame. It was that same summer, we brought them in to give us those recommendations and made a lot of improvements to tighten up even further the controls within the system. So Tulsans should have confidence in their public schools.
Well, when all of that happened with the Ryan Walters piece a few years ago, what I loved is, and I offer this to you, is everybody, I think, kind of understood the political climate, and you became a target in that. And I feel like that's what's happening now. And, what I loved, though, was that everybody that, as I watch social media supporting you, I mean, you have mostly unbelievable fan base here, and I don't see that changing. But I also know that these little things could, a girl that is so passionate about being in Tulsa, that it could, chip away at your confidence. So I love that I'm not seeing that in you today. And I do love that you agreed to, do this, because I was like, oh my gosh, she's got so much going on. She's going to cancel this. So thank you for not
You know,
canceling.
one of the reasons I became a target of Ryan Walters and his political base, and why they waged this like vicious and intensely personal campaign. I'm always like, it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. But they were like making it about me, is because I believe so strongly that every single child, every single family, every single team member, whatever is their identity, what makes them special, that we love them, celebrate them, welcome them wholeheartedly into our schools. And I believe that's what Tulsa is about too. And so whether it's their, whatever their home language is, whatever their race, their gender identity, their sexual orientation, whatever that is about an amazing tapestry of people that make up our community. And I led so intentionally on that. And I think because of that, those sort of extremists, saw that as like overly accepting. And I think that was one of the things that really put us in the crosshairs. But that's who Tulsa is too. I mean, I am who I am because I was raised here in Tulsa, where people are kind and we love one another and we welcome people when they come to our community. And that's how my church, and my family taught me to be as well, right here in Tulsa. So that was difficult when that then resulted in just such kind of vitriol. It's really the opposite of what I believe our city is about, and certainly the opposite of what I'm about and how I lead.
Mm. I remember the first time I did come to your office one time to do a strategic planning. And I remember walking in and just the inclusion that was in your office. And I remember feeling safe. So as a gay woman moving about the world and growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I would have felt this included when I was a kid, right? And so it made me just so grateful that you were at the helm. And so I offer that to you, that's even been part of your platform, because I know the opposite of that when it wasn't that. So I think I especially watched what you were going through with a lot of gratitude, because you didn't shrink in that moment. You didn't change your views. You didn't, be reductive just so that you could be politically correct. You stayed the course. So let's talk about, where does that come from? You keep saying faith and family, but that's curated, right?
Thank you, Tracy, for what you said. I did not remember that, and that means so much to me. And there were so many people, students and team members and families in the district who said the same. And that's why it's important not just to have policies that reflect that, I don't like the word acceptance, but that recognition that we're all different, and that celebration of people's uniqueness, what makes them special, not just having the policies, but being explicit about it. You have to be.
You don't have to be. You chose to be. And again, I'm just going to double down on that and say, I travel all over the world, as you know, and the fact that the sound bites that were coming out of our state were so not inclusive and so divisive. And, for me, again, I just keep going back to people that, like you, that are willing to stand and say, no, that's not okay. And no, that's not what we're about. And we're trying to create a place where everybody feels valuable and everybody feels valued. I mean, there's not a lot of people doing that. And the political climate right now is making it actually more attractive to be, what would the word be? It's not divisive. It's just to exclude entire groups of people.
Yeah.
And here's my big fear. And I know you share this with me, or I would imagine you would, that, there are queer people in, the schools that are going to be hiding again, or that there are people that are going to feel discriminated against, or there's going to be things said that are discriminating, like all those things. I just felt like you were very clear that there was no place for that. And your making a stand on that probably cost you, like, your dream job in that sense. And so that just is heartbreaking for me. I remember seeing you and saying, oh my gosh, and you were like, no, it comes with the job. You're like, this comes with the job. I'm in a seat that I'm going to take a lot of arrows, but I don't know. You're taking them pretty beautifully, friend.
Well, I mean, there are arrows and then there are like giant cannons. And like I said, I think the hardest part is where people start to accuse you of things that just aren't even factual. And it gets beyond sort of this, the culture war kind of stuff when people are accusing you of being either, that you weren't a competent manager or competent with financial management, which is not the case, but maybe even like these words like suggests or secretly. And it's really difficult because you can see why people would see or read or listen to something like that and think, oh my goodness, that's not good. When you teach, this is why we try to teach students to be much more discerning, because words like may have or suggest or things like that, those should automatically be real triggers for people to go, what in the world? This is not a news story. This is, it's almost like gossip.
Well, I'm going to move on and ask you other fun questions before we hang up here. But I think your strategy to say, I'm not going to go down all these rabbit holes, and I'm not going to defend all the things. I think it keeps your integrity intact. So I get the strategy, but boy, there'd be a part of me that would, if I were you, that would want to do that differently. But I think your strategy's sound. So let's just talk a little bit about what's next for you. So what is next? What's the next shift for you? Do you know?
Right now, I am just thrilled to be able to continue serving the community in the work that I'm doing, and just getting to be a part of, scholarship announcements and supports for our public school systems, but also the work that I'm doing at the university that's internal and supporting leaders within the organization and practices within the organization. And so I think that it's still coming together. I don't know, of all the different kinds of things that I'm doing, how that will begin to get more focused. But I think that it seems like it's leaning toward having something to do with that kind of leadership and what it takes and how to do it well, but also how to stay physically and emotionally and mentally well while you're doing it. Because over my 37 years of being a professional and 20 plus as a large system leader, I've had times where I did that self-care portion well, and times where I lost myself in the work. And I can look back and I can see how, when I was paying more attention to that physical, emotional, and mental wellness, that I was a better leader. And when I was making sure that my team members were doing that we were all serving students better. And so it's not indulgent, and it is actually quite critical to being able to lead well. So
What's your practice? What's your practice in that? What are some of the things that you do to take care of you? What like hobbies, or what do you do? Are you a yogi? What are you?
you know, I have to be honest and tell you that part of why I'm focusing on this right now is because I've been really doing a quite terrible job recently. And it's easy to get off your path when you're super stressed. And these recent allegations they've been hard for me to see and to hear. It's been quite painful. And so, while I ought to be leaning into my walking, which I do, leaning into my other wellness habits, leaning into those things, in addition to, of course, prayer, which I've been very much leaning into, I've been doing the opposite. And so, but to answer your question, when I have been doing it well, and the commitment that I've made to myself for getting back on track, I love to walk. I love Pilates. I, kind of physically, I love my pets, my family, of course, reading, and then, prayer and meditation and so forth. But it's easy to get off track, which is why I want to help people stay on track, because it really does make a difference.
So I had a knee replaced about a year ago, and I let that be my excuse. I was like, well, I can't work out. Oh, I can't do all the things. And recently it was called to my attention that I wasn't taking good care of myself. And so I have a trainer. And so I, reached out to Lisa, and I said, okay, shout out to Lisa. I want to come back. And so I canceled like 3 in a row. And here's what she sends me back. Yeah, please don't schedule until you're serious. And I know. So, which was exactly the kick in the pants that I needed. So, right. So, and I replied, okay, I understand. And then it just kind of ate at me. And I was like, okay. So anyway, so this morning at 6:30, when I did not want to go, there was no way I was going to cancel, but I'm only 3 weeks in. So I'm going to just throw you a lifeline and say the accountability can be helpful. but it is a game changer. But it's exactly the last thing you want to do when you're going through what you're going through. So I get it.
It ought to be the opposite. And I think when you have a strong practice and then you have something happen, then you are more likely to lean into those healthy coping practices as opposed to the unhealthy coping practices.
That's right.
But when you're not being great about it and then something happens, then I think it's the worst kind of situation to be in. But yeah, it matters so much. And for women in particular, the weightlifting and those kinds of things, which I've been so good at in the past, they just make a tremendous difference in your sleep, in your how you feel, in your clarity, what we put in our bodies for nourishment or the lack thereof, as has been the case for me too much lately. It also affects how you feel and how your brain is functioning.
That's right. Well, this feels like a big piece, maybe a big piece of the book that you're going to write. Are you going to write a book? You have to write a book.
I have a colleague, and she and I, along with some other women leaders, hosted a panel a few weeks ago on leading well and living well. And it was standing room only. I mean, it's clearly a place where this was a meeting of school administrators. It's clearly a place that people recognize they need to be and are craving more information. And so my colleague Christina and I, Dr. Grant and I, are working on that. And yes, we have a regular meeting going between the two of us, and we are developing something that we are planning to turn into a book proposal.
Nice. Listen, you have so much wisdom and so many lessons learned the hard way, right? We have to learn from you, right? So I love the idea of you putting that in a book and standing on stages and all the things. So I'll just put you on the spot. So as you look back on this body of work, what would you tell the younger version of you about what you're going to go through? And what do you think are the big important lessons in leadership that you have learned?
Well, I think for one thing, I've learned that while those long-term measurable or medium-term measurable gains are so important, how did you grow access to college courses for high school students? How did you increase Montessori programs? All these things that you do, and you can see them there and they're serving. All of that makes a difference and it matters. But so many unpredictable things can happen that can either undo work that's been done or, change your course in ways that you never could have imagined, like what has happened to me in the last couple of years. Never in a million years thought, when I came home to Tulsa, that this would be where it would end up. I planned on serving out my career as superintendent and doing it well and really working alongside other leaders in Tulsa to lift this beautiful, wonderful city with these amazing humans up in fabulous ways. And so I never would have dreamed that we would be where we are, or that I would be where I am with this. But that part of it being unpredictable, we have to be ready for that. And so the lesson for me, what matters most are the way in which you carry yourself through the world and the way you treat others and the model that you set for how to treat others. And those are things you can control. The rest of it, you have influence and you have work to do and you're going to work hard at that, but it starts to get outside of your ability to sustain it once you've moved on. But how you make someone feel in a moment or the model that you set for how to treat others can't really be undone.
True. What are you most proud of that you accomplished in your time?
Well, I have the list. I've named some of them. So yeah, it's that stuff. I know we did work that matters. I see it, and I can look back at my career and think, from the school I helped found in the early 90s that's still in Fort Worth, Texas today, to, work that I've done in other places I've lived, you could see it and it's lasting, and I'm proud of those things. But I think the thing that I'm most proud of are the people who I served alongside and the way in which we served and led together. And then what that has meant for those folks, including the people in leadership roles who've gone on to, take new and additional responsibilities, both in Tulsa and beyond, and and are serving in ways that I think really, really matter for students, and serving in ways that are reflective of the values that we shared.
Nice. Well, that's a good note to end on. I just, listen, I'm cheering you on. I'm so grateful that you showed up today and we had this conversation, but I'm super excited for what's next for you. I'll be on the front row, as you know, watching whatever happens next, but I love that you're, creating a book and all the other things. I'm sure there's a lot more opportunity coming your way as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's always, always, always good to see you and talk to you.
That's all for this episode of Shift Out Loud. A special thank you to our guest, Dr. Deborah Gist. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe and share. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Shift Out Loud.